Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new series known as Books, Banter, and Beyond. This is a video series all from the Next Chapter bookstore. And for our origin story, we're going to talk about one of the biggest, if not the biggest, origin story out there, Star Wars. Hey everybody, my name is Rob. This is my mom, Karen, and we are your hosts at Books, Banter, and Beyond. So before we jump into the show, let's give you a quick little rundown of what we're going to be doing here. If you haven't figured out already, we're going to be talking books, authors, titles, classics, everything. We're going to have some fun. We're going to play some games, maybe even craft a little bit. Who knows? And we figured that if we're going to talk about our first episode, why not talk about, well, the beginning of Star Wars, right?
Yep.
So this series actually brings us back way before A New Hope, any of those things that you guys have probably heard of. This was known as Dawn of the Jedi, and this takes us back to where everything would become Star Wars as it is today. We're going to talk about the two factions, the Jedi and Sith, the predecessors, the Jedi. We're going to talk about the power struggle that every good and bad guy has. And of course, we're going to talk about what created the biggest society in galactic fictional history, right?
Right.
To do so, you and I had, one question. We decided to ask, how does the beginning create this continual saga, right? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Right. And some of the major themes here to talk about is obviously the creation of everybody, the people, the races, the planets. Talking about what's known as the Force Saber, which is the predecessor of the lightsaber, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the Force, because it ain't Star Wars without the Lucas Force, right?
Right.
So, before we jump in, we want to give that spoiler alert because we are very kind to our book-loving people here. We're going to go into some things. So if you haven't read it yet, go ahead, go find it, go read it, and then come on back and come nerd out with us here. So what makes this series so cool is it started out with a comic, and we have 3 comic book titles here. So number 1 is known as Force Storm, and this gives us what every origin book gives. The people, the places, the things that happen. We learn about the Jedi, which are the predecessors of the Jedi, and they live in the balance, good and evil, good or evil. And we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. Number 2 brings us to the Prisoner of Bogan, and this is where we get that arc of the dun-dun-dun, evil and good. We have one main character known as Dagon Locke, and of course our main character, Zesh, and they begin to split here because one wants to do his own thing, aka be evil, and the other one feels like we should stick.
Right.
And I know we've talked about this a bunch, right?
Right. I mean, it sort of feels like it parallels, the Bible and what in the beginning of time, right? Good and evil. So I know we're going to be talking about that. It's kind of cool.
And I love you brought that up because so many of these books do bring in religious texts in the same way that the story goes, what side do you choose, right?
Right.
Lastly, for this comic series is known as the Force War, and from the title, yep, we have that big showdown that everybody loves. Of course, spoiler alert, the good guys make it out fine. And this is actually where everybody heads off into the universe. So Force War, in a way, is what started Star Wars because people left, people, emigrated to different planets. And that could also be brought up to real life as well, how people move around and how countries become what they are. And this is where that 3 arc ends. But in 2020, 2021, we got Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void, which I love. I listened to it on Audible. Great book. And this brings a more familial chapter to this. Our 2 main characters, Lana Ray and Dalian Brock, are what are known as Jedi Rangers, and they're supposed to upkeep the idea of balance of good and evil. However, her brother Dalian, he wants to go do his own thing. He wants to explore the galaxy. To do so, he needs to open up a hypergate. Well, unfortunately, doing so may destroy their entire section of the universe. he doesn't seem to care, or maybe he doesn't know,
Right.
and continues on his journey. Now, Lana Ray has to choose between family and survival, and unfortunately does have to subdue her brother, killing him in a final battle to save her planet.
Right.
This puts her in a situation of, did I do the right thing by killing my brother, or did I do the right thing by saving the universe?
And back to the Bible, am I my brother's keeper, right? I mean, we're back to that whole familiar, Cain and Abel. I love this. And as we talk about this, Rob, I mean, I didn't even think about this until we're now talking about it now. And I'm literally saying there is a direct correlation in all of this.
There is, there is. And before we get into our discussion, why don't we bring up our sponsor?
Absolutely. Now they can find all sorts of books there, right? And they can find comic books and all sorts of things, and they're all used, and the prices are amazing, amazing. So
And we're going to go over a few titles that we have later on, so
absolutely,
stick around to the end for that as well.
absolutely,
But I know you, because you are learning from me as the Star
yeah.
Wars universe. You put down a couple questions to kind of go over that I think viewers are probably going to want to digest a little bit. So, what are
Right.
we going to talk about first?
So let's talk. Let's start with the Force Storm. Okay, the very first comic that you talked about, and I'm just curious how the setting of the Force Storm in the pre-Republic era would impact the portrayal of the Jedi Order's predecessors, or also known as Jedi Order, which I love. I love that there's a Jedi and a Jedi. So
And
how
people
does that
always
do
go,
that?
I think you're spelling it wrong. And I go,
Right,
no, this is actually a thing.
right.
So those who have read the books, you know that there's the different eras. There's pre-Republic, Republic,
Mhm.
after the Republic, all that. But I think what Force Storm does well, that I think most origin stories do, is it does give you the idea of what you're looking forward to. What
Mhm.
Star Wars does, I think, a little bit better is they don't focus on, okay, we need to have one main protagonist and follow that person.
Right,
They say, hey, let's give you a universe. And that's why the question we brought up was, why is universe building so important? And we're going to, throughout these videos that we go through, we're going to talk about world building. But Star Wars, to me, is more science. They built a universe from the Big Bang, basically. And we all know
right,
the Big Bang from
right,
reality. And as you pointed out, and as I pointed out, it does parallel a lot of things in real life. I mean, we're not flying gigantic spaceships, but we are flying rockets. We are able to go to Mars, right? So
right.
I think, in a way, not only does this show what Star Wars will become, but I think it kind of shows what we've become.
Right. And what the opportunity is out there, because when Star Wars first came out back in the day, I mean, when the movies, let's just say when the movies first came out,
Right,
we were not doing some of this stuff in space, as we meaning, the world, the
right,
planet. So it's almost like art imitating reality, and then reality is imitating art. One begets the other, and maybe it's that imagination that comes from the art. I don't know, that allows people in real time to say, maybe we should do that. That seems kind of cool. I don't know. It's interesting how it's paralleled.
No, it is, and I think that's what makes the universe today such a good, correlation. Because without a origin, without
Right,
Force Storm, Star Wars may have not expanded as much, and I think they even call it the expanded universe sometimes.
right.
So there's a lot of
And they've also, I mean, the whole Star Wars world has evolved in a very interesting way. They started, with one, and then they went backwards and said, okay, here's the prequel that happened before that. And then, back in, I think, the 80s or the 90s, when we went and saw the movies that came out, that was like, well, this happened before. And then you've got, now let's really dive in, and so it's like layer upon layer upon layer. And isn't that what life's all about?
there you go, there you go.
Yep. So I had a question about number two, and that was about the prisoner of Bogan. Is it? Did I say that right? Bogan.
Some people say Bogan. Yes.
So how does the prisoner of Bogan? Sorry, I'm reading it because I had to write these down. Continue to explore the themes that are established in the first arc, Force Storm, particularly when we regard the balance between light and the dark sides of the Force.
So that's perfect. So as I mentioned before, obviously what we know as the good and the bad are two separate. So either you're a Jedi or a Sith. You can't be both. And something that Star Wars does interestingly is that they believe that you have to be either perfectly good
Mm-hmm.
or perfectly bad, but you can't have the two. However, in the series, the Jedi believe that in order to be balanced, you have to have both. You have to have the positive and the negative. And what I mean by that, and this kind of takes me on, personal journeys from other people I know as well. You kind of have to take the bad with the good, the yin and the yang. I think from Asian culture, from
Right.
China. What this one does, though, specifically is that it does explain why separation causes the biggest problem. Now, in this arc, Dagon Locke, who's sent away for breaking the law, he is in basically person, nobody's there with him. He's by himself. And in that doing so, he kind of, I guess, goes a little crazy, kind of the ideas. But the ideas he has are not necessarily bad. It's I want to pave my own path. I want to do things my own way.
Mm.
Back on the regular planet on Tython, Zesh is going, hey, let's all be good. And if bad guys come in, all you gotta do is kill them, and we'll be fine. And no problem.
That's so
You
interesting, Rob.
see,
Yeah, because it's also are things predetermined. I mean, that's something we talk
exactly.
about all the time. I mean, not just obviously not just in Star Wars, in real life. If things are already predetermined and we have no free will, that gives us a whole load of issues right there. And if in fact things are not predetermined and we do have free will, that's a whole nother thing. So it's curious that this is what this is all about, right?
Yeah, I mean, from the get go, and again, every book does this. It's no surprise that you separate the bad guy from the good guy. But from the get go, the guy who ends up being who ended up creating what would be the Sith really was just kind of doing what anybody would do in isolation, and maybe it got to him, maybe it didn't. I don't know. But because of the plan of attack of the thing that happened, we ended up getting the next one, the war, because of this separation, right? So
Right, right. So, okay, so just moving then, and how does the Force War continue the narrative that's been established in the previous ones, right, in the previous arcs, particularly regarding the characters of am I saying this right? Sesh,
Zesh, yes,
Zesh.
exactly. There you
Uh,
go.
I can't even pronounce it. So, those
Dagon Locke
characters
and the Jedi.
and the Jedi Order, I can say that. So,
It's
how?
okay. I'm teaching as I go, right? So yeah. So obviously, the Force War, like I said, the name by itself tells you what happens. The Jedi go up against fellow Jedi because at this point there's no separation. It's just one sect of Jedi versus another sect of Jedi. And of course, we do have, we can't forget the bad guys that are coming in. So there's kind of a three-way battle going on, which always seems to be the case. But by the end of this issue here, we we have basically broken down the Star Wars universe into the areas of what it's going to be. And then as you go on in the different books you read, you kind of go, oh, well, now I see why this planet is doing this. Now I see why this planet is doing this. Because it all goes back to the beginning when a group of people really just couldn't figure out the same thing. They
Right.
wasn't so much they couldn't get along, they just couldn't agree on one idea. And boom, everything just kind of deteriorated, I guess.
Right.
But it gave us a really good
Foundation.
universe.
Right, right. A good foundation. So then we get from the three comic books, right? The Storm, Prisoner Bogan, and Force War. And then we go into the book that came out, you said sometime in
Yes.
2020, 2021.
Pretty recent, a few years ago, yeah.
Right. And it's called The Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void. So, how does the setting of Tython, a world abundant in the Force, contribute to the thematic exploration of the balance between light and dark sides of the Force in the narrative? How do we tie this
So
together?
what makes this book so great, and Into the Void is a very good predictor of what's going to happen, because literally what happens is she has to go down into the depths to
Mhm.
fight her brother and basically make the universe what it's going to be. But more so, the planet that they live on, Tython, is literally the living force. So there are tornadoes, there are earthquakes, there are tsunamis. But it's not so much of how it works in the real world. it's because of the Force. And if you don't keep it balanced, you can actually destroy the planet because the Force is that strong.
Wait,
So
are you saying that in order for the planet to this planet to, not our planet, but to remain, you need the tornadoes, you need the hurricanes, you need all of those?
you need them, but you also, this is why the Jedi believe in the good and evil, because if you don't practice it correctly and you don't control the planet, you can actually destroy it. So the natural disasters are important. The way you do everything is important. But I think what's most important here is the fact that the main character, Lanare, knows that it's a very hard job to lead
Mm-hmm.
because you are literally in control of everybody's life being a ranger in this country in this this universe. And because of that, she has to realize that I can't slip. I can't stop for 2 seconds. I have to be on my toes,
Right.
but it also clouds your, you know, does family matter? Does my neighbor matter? Does, my other jobs matter? Because you're basically engulfed in this. And that's why some people go, is the force good? Is the force bad? It's just strong,
It's just
and the
it's
force
just the force.
it's a strong, strong thing that you have to respect as you would nature.
Would you say that the force is also another analogy of a higher power, God, whoever we is
Yeah, I
that
mean, I think in a way, and we're going to, in one of our later videos, we're going to talk about a character who basically tries to play that role. But I think in a way, the Force is exactly that. It's basically if you are trying to keep it happy, then everybody will be happy. If you make a misstep or if you forget the point of it,
you're going to be reminded?
you're going to be reminded and it may not be so pleasant.
Got it.
So, yeah, I mean, these are a great set of books. And really, like I said, if you haven't read it, go check them out. If you want to know or if you want to know why the universe is what it is, this group of stories is going
Right.
to tell you.
So, if they go and check out the bookstore, and we're going to show them how to do that, you do have some very cool Star Wars items in there. You have the Star Wars, and you're holding it up there. What's this about?
So this one actually follows pretty close behind Into the Void. This guy's name is Revan, as you can see. He's a anti-hero. He's a bad guy, good guy, bad guy, good guy. But he works for the good guys. And he was brainwashed at one point to become a good guy, but he remembers his past. This is one of those characters that also really portrays what the darker side of Star Wars really is.
Right.
This is the guy that tells you Star Wars ain't always pretty, but you can still learn a lot from this guy. So I read this too recently. Great story. Definitely recommend it. $4, really
$4.
good.
And, we don't talk about this very often, but the bookstore, it's a used bookstore. You have collected an amazing collection of all different topics. We're on Star Wars right now. So go and pick this up. Also, you have the Star Wars Heir to the Empire.
Ah, yes, yes. So our friends Luke, Leia, and Han are back in another ravaging adventure. A new villain named Thrawn has appeared, and it's up to the three of them with their buddies to do what they do best,
Right.
save the day. You'll notice, though, at this point, we are way past any of the balance stuff. We are definitely on the good versus evil here.
Right.
And this will give you a new idea of what it means to, pick a side. Do you want to be good? Do you want to be bad? Or do you try to kind of stay in the middle like the original guy said? But again, great story. Highly recommend.
So go ahead and scan the QR code. It will take you right there. And we also have Star Wars, the Corellian Trilogy book.
So again, our friend Han Solo here. This is actually his home planet. So of course it wouldn't be a book about him without it. And this is book one of a series that's going to be talking about him trying to save his family, his home planet, and all of his friends. Again, with the help of some faces you might just recognize as well. So again, before I forget, when you go to the store, we do have all of these really cool comics. You'll find them all there. We have some graphic novels as well.
So we're showing you how to go do that. So we have three different sections on this screen: paperbacks and hardbound books. You carry, guys, carry lots of used book titles. You can scan that, as well as comic books, an assortment of your favorite, including Star Wars. And we also have merchandise. Go ahead and scan that, and then we're going to show you, because we're wearing our merchandise right now. So we have T-shirts. And we have coffee mugs. We have them both, I guess, in white, and I'm drinking from my stainless one right now. Hot and cold. It's cool, guys. There's so many cool things in there. Go check it out. I'm going to put the screen up one more time. We make it really easy for you at the Next Chapter Bookstore.shop. Go ahead and scan this, and you're going to go ahead and just see some really great things there. Rob, always fun to do shows with you.
I cannot wait. We have a whole slew of upcoming greatness to give. And again, Books, Banter, and Beyond is just about that. Not just talking about the book, but giving our banter and just going a little bit beyond to
Right.
have some extra fun too. So
Let us know what your favorite Star Wars book is. I'm like, bleh. Let us know what your favorite one is. We're curious, and maybe we'll do a review on it if if we like it. Okay, go out, give somebody an awesome day. Rob, see you next time on Books, Banter, and Beyond.